A monster raised in the Sultan's palace, Vlad the Impaler. Meet the psychopathic king who nailed Ottoman envoys' turbans to their skulls for refusing to take off their hats. This is the fatal historical mistake that marked the beginning of the end for Vlad the Impaler. The seeds of hatred in the shadow of the empire. In the grand tapestry of historical narratives, few confrontations possess the colossal, suffocating, and uninterrupted darkness of the tale between the world emperor Mehmed the Conqueror and Vlad III, the Impaler. This epic struggle, one that meticulously examines the psychological and tactical war between two great and ruthless geniuses, did not begin with the roar of cannons, but in the freezing, silent cold of 1442. Vlad, the young heir to the Wallachian throne, alongside his brother Radu the Handsome, was surrendered by their father as political hostages to the Ottoman Empire. Intended as a mere guarantee of loyalty, they were sent first to the steep and isolated Egragos castle in Kütahya, and later to the vibrant imperial palace in Edirne. While the younger Radu quickly assimilated into the intoxicating palace culture, embracing Islam and becoming a favorite of the Ottoman elite, young Vlad retreated into a dark and silent incubation period. It was during these captive years that he meticulously etched into his mind the inner workings of the Ottoman war machine, the brutal efficiency of the Devşirme system, the unshakable martial discipline of the Janissaries, and the devastating hit-and-run tactics of the ikinci cavalry. Speaking flawless Turkish, he functioned almost like a gifted, vengeful spy, quietly absorbing the empire's strength while secretly receiving the agonizing news that his father and older brother Mircea had been buried alive and brutally murdered by Hungarian forces and rebellious Wallachian nobles, boyars. This profound trauma laid the morbid, rotting foundations of his uncontrollable hatred, forging the psychological blueprint for the infamous, agonizing execution method he would later unleash upon the world. The false vassal and the blood of the boyars. When Vlad finally ascended the Wallachian throne in 1456, he initially masked his boiling wrath, appearing to the Ottoman court as a docile and obedient vassal. Yet, beneath this subservient facade, he was violently consolidating his power, purging the very boyars who had betrayed his family in a macabre Easter feast that ended with hundreds of nobles impaled around his castle. Emboldened by the surging Crusader winds sweeping across Europe following Mehmed's cataclysmic conquest of Constantinople, and secretly backed by the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus, Vlad's arrogance swelled. He abruptly and fiercely refused to pay his annual tribute of 10,000 gold ducats, nor would he send the promised 500 Wallachian children to the Janissary Corps. The geopolitical boiling point was reached when Mehmed, seeking to diplomatically burst this boil of rebellion before it infected the Balkans, sent the Greek-born envoy Thomas Kataballinos and the veteran Sanjak Bey of Nicopolis, Kakırsebesi Hamza Bey, with 1,000-man guard. The spark of defiance and the nailed turbans. Vlad did not meet this diplomatic mission with words, but with unprecedented savagery. Ambushing the Ottoman delegation in a narrow, inescapable valley, he shattered centuries of diplomatic immunity. In a grotesque display of mockery and power, Vlad impaled Hamza Bey on a gilded stake purposely crafted to be much taller than the rest, a twisted homage to his high military rank. When the surviving envoys were brought before him and steadfastly refused to remove their turbans in his presence, citing their religious and cultural beliefs, Vlad coldly ordered his guards to nail the turbans directly to their skulls with thick iron spikes, ensuring they would never have to remove them again. This single, horrifying act of defiance officially ignited an irreversible diplomatic and military war, transforming Vlad from a rebellious vassal into the empire's most wanted enemy. The winter of blood on the frozen Danube. Not content with mere provocation, Vlad sought to strike absolute terror into the heart of the empire during the freezing frost of the winter of 1461 to 1462. Exploiting the extreme weather, he led his forces across the entirely frozen Danube River, plunging deep into Ottoman territories within present-day Bulgaria. What followed was a massacre of apocalyptic proportions. Sweeping through Silistra, Nicopolis, and Vidin, his army brutally slaughtered 23,884 civilians and soldiers, a mixture of Turks, Bulgarians, and anyone who crossed his path. Vlad meticulously counted the dead, proudly and chillingly reporting this exact bloody toll in a detailed letter to the Hungarian king, boasting of the severed noses and ears he had collected. He had completely shattered the empire's patience, inviting the full, devastating wrath of the conqueror. The March of the Conqueror and the Poisoned Earth. In the spring of 1462, the earth shook as Mehmed the Conqueror flooded into Wallachia, leading a colossal imperial army of over 150,000 men burning with the fire of vengeance, supported by a massive fleet of 120 ships carrying heavy bombard cannons up the Danube. Vlad, a master of psychological warfare, knew that engaging in a pitched battle on an open plain against a force 3 times his size would be absolute suicide. Instead, he retreated with his people into the steep, impenetrable foothills of the Carpathian Mountains, unleashing the most ruthless asymmetric and biological warfare tactics history had ever witnessed. As the Ottoman war machine marched forward, they found nothing but a scorched wasteland. Vlad had set fire to all pastures, poisoned the water wells with rotting animal carcasses, and orchestrated a diabolical biological attack by disguising terminally ill prisoners, carrying syphilis, tuberculosis, and the bubonic plague, in peasant clothes, instructing them to infiltrate the Ottoman encampments. He sought to rot the mighty army from the inside out, letting dysentery, thirst, and epidemics do the work of swords. The Night of Terror and Fratricide. The absolute climax of this grueling psychological warfare arrived in the pitch-black darkness of June 17. As the exhausted Ottoman army rested, their morale slowly melting away in the hostile environment, Vlad orchestrated a hellish night attack. Utilizing his intimate knowledge from his Edirne years, Vlad infiltrated the sprawling encampment using secret Ottoman passwords, leading an elite death squad of 7,000 men who spoke perfect Turkish and wore Ottoman Sipahi armor. By lighting torches and blowing bugles in the dead of night, they ignited horrific panic and deadly fratricide among the sleeping soldiers. Vlad's ultimate goal was to find the royal tent, assassinate Mehmed in his sleep, and turn the massive imperial army into a headless, panicking monster. Yet, in the chaotic confusion brought by darkness, Vlad mistook the tents and attacked the headquarters of the Grand Viziers. Awakened by the deafening noise, Mem did not lose an ounce of his unshakable composure. His mere presence and immediate orders caused the elite Janissaries to swiftly close ranks around the royal tent, weaving a virtually impenetrable wall of flesh and steel that repelled the suicide assault, forcing Vlad to retreat back into the depths of the forest with heavy casualties before dawn. The Forest of the Impaled. Surviving this massive shock, the Ottoman army relentlessly pushed forward, finally approaching Vlad's abandoned capital of Targovist. There, they were met with a blood-curdling tableau that reeked of death for miles, the infamous Forest of the Impaled. Stretching 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide, the Makaab Valley displayed Hamza Bey swaying in the wind in his rotted red silk kaftan right in the center. Surrounding him were more than 20,000 innocent souls, Ottoman soldiers captured during the winter raids, Bulgarian peasants, and even Vlad's own political opponents, including women and children, all impaled on towering stakes, their eyes being pecked out by swarms of black crows. Although the battle-hardened soldiers' stomachs turned and their morale plummeted in the face of this incomprehensible, surreal brutality, contemporary Byzantine historian Chauke Kondyles notes that Mem silently watched this horrific scene from his horse for a long time. Demonstrating his supreme military and political genius, Mem softly stated, "It will not be easy to take the land of a man who can do such diabolical things to his own people, but such a cruel man cannot rule a state." The political checkmate and the rotting caged beast. Refusing to drag his army into an endless, grueling guerrilla hunt in those diseased and poisonous mountains, Mehmed played his masterstroke. He placed Vlad's own brother, Radu the Handsome, on the Wallachian throne, leaving him with a formidable Akinji cavalry unit and a substantial treasury to win over the populace. Mehmed returned to Istanbul, destroying Vlad not with a sword strike, but with a flawless political chess move. Desiring peace, stability, and free trade, the Wallachian boyars swiftly abandoned Vlad's paranoid tyranny and defected to Radu. Utterly alone, armyless, and stateless, Vlad fled north, seeking refuge with King Matthias Corvinus in Hungary. Instead of finding a crusader army, he was betrayed by the pragmatic king, who forged letters accusing Vlad of treason against the Christian world to avoid a new war with the Ottomans. Thrown into the damp dungeons of Vysegrad Castle for 12 unending years, Vlad lost the last fragments of his sanity, maintaining his morbid satisfaction by impaling mice, birds, and insects on tiny wooden splinters in his cell. Though briefly released in 1476 to reclaim his throne in blood, he was a relic of a bygone era of terror. Just 2 months later, he was ambushed in a snowy forest near Bucharest, put to the sword, and left to die in the mud. To entirely end his dark legend, his severed head was preserved in a barrel steeped in honey, brought to Constantinople, and exhibited on a spear in the streets of Istanbul. Mehmed's unshakable reason of state and institutional vision had eternally buried the bloody legend of the Impaler into the dark and dusty pages of history.